The council chamber floated in the heart of the Calric system, a massive station that had served as the meeting place for peaceful species for over 2,000 years. Today, the chamber was filled with fear. Ambassador Thalarin stood before the council members, her forearms trembling slightly. She was a Veloxi, her insect-like features normally calm and composed. But not today. The holographic display behind her showed the burning remains of 3 colony worlds. Billions dead, millions more fleeing. The Vrask swarm has consumed everything, she said, her translator turning her clicking sounds into words the others could understand. Our defensive fleet engaged them near Tellus Prime. We lost every ship. Every single one. A Kellan representative, his blue skin pale with shock, spoke up. But our ships are advanced. Our shields are the best in the galaxy. How could we lose so completely? Thalarin touched a control and new images appeared. The Vrask were massive insectoid creatures, each one the size of a ground transport. They flew through space in living ships, vessels grown from their own biology. But it was not their appearance that made the council members gasp. It was what they were doing. The Vrask had no interest in communication, no interest in trade or diplomacy. They simply consumed. Their ships had ripped through the defensive fleet like paper, biological weapons dissolving shields in seconds. Then they had descended on the colonies and eaten everything. Plants, animals, buildings, people, everything. They are not like us, Thalarin continued. We evolved on peaceful worlds. We learned to talk, to trade, to build together. The Vrask evolved to consume. They do not communicate. They do not stop. They just eat and spread. The council chamber fell silent. For thousands of years, the syndicate of civilized worlds had maintained peace through words and economic pressure. War was something from ancient history, a barbaric practice their ancestors had abandoned. Their ships carried sensors and trading goods, not weapons. Their soldiers were ceremonial guards who had never seen battle. An old Korthan counselor, his scales gray with age, spoke in a quiet voice. What can we do? We have no weapons. We have no warriors. We built our civilization on the idea that violence was unnecessary. Thalarin took a deep breath. She had known this moment would come. She had prepared for the shock, the horror, the refusal, but they were out of options. There is one possibility, she said slowly. In the restricted archives, there are files on species we have quarantined. Species too dangerous for contact. Several council members shifted uncomfortably. Everyone knew about the quarantined worlds. Planets where life had evolved in such harsh conditions that the inhabitants became violent, unpredictable, and aggressive. The Syndicate had placed warning beacons around these systems and forbidden all contact. It was for everyone's safety. You cannot be serious, the Quellan representative said. Those species are classified as deadly. Some of them are still fighting wars among themselves. They would be as dangerous to us as the Vrask. Thalarin nodded. Perhaps, but at least we could ask them for help. The Vrask will not negotiate. They will not stop. They will consume every world in the Syndicate, and we cannot stop them with trade agreements and diplomatic protests. She brought up a new file. The council members leaned forward, reading the classification label. Sol 3 Earth, Class 12 Death World. A Class 12? Someone whispered. That is the highest danger rating possible. Thalarin displayed information about Earth, a planet where nearly everything was designed to kill. Predators everywhere. Diseases that could wipe out entire populations. Weather that could destroy cities. Earthquakes, volcanoes, hurricanes, floods. And yet life had not just survived. It had thrived. The dominant species calls themselves humans or Terrans, Thalarin explained. They evolved as pursuit predators. They hunted other animals by chasing them until the prey collapsed from exhaustion. Their eyes face forward for tracking. Their bodies are designed for endurance. They can heal from terrible injuries. They can adapt to almost any environment. More data appeared. Humans had survived ice ages and heat waves. They had spread across their entire planet, living in deserts, jungles, mountains, and frozen wastelands. They had fought wars with each other for thousands of years, constantly developing new and more effective weapons. They sound like monsters, the old Korthan said quietly. They sound like survivors, Thalarin corrected. And survival is exactly what we need right now. The debate lasted for hours. Many council members argued against contact. The Terrans were unpredictable. They might attack the Syndicate instead of helping. They might demand payment the Syndicate could not afford. They might simply refuse and leave the galaxy to burn. But as the hours passed, reports came in of more Vrask attacks. More worlds burning, more refugees fleeing with nowhere safe to go. Finally, the old Corthan counselor stood. I have lived for 300 years. I have seen our civilization grow and prosper in peace, but I have also studied our history. Our ancestors knew war. They knew violence. They abandoned it because they chose peace, not because they were incapable of fighting. If we are to die, then let us die having tried everything possible. Send the message to Earth. The vote was close, but it passed. Taylorin was authorized to compose and transmit a distress signal to Sol 3. She sat alone in the communications center, carefully choosing her words. She knew the Terrans would see through any deception. She had to be honest, even if the truth was humiliating. To the Terrans of Sol 3, she began. We are the Syndicate of Civilized Worlds. For thousands of years, we have maintained peace through diplomacy and trade. We placed your system under quarantine because we feared you. We thought you were too dangerous, too violent, too unpredictable. We were wrong to fear you. We should have feared what else was out there in the darkness. A species called the Vrask is consuming our worlds. Billions are dead. Millions more will die. Our peaceful fleets cannot stop them. We have no weapons, no warriors, no experience with war. We are asking for your help. We know we have no right to ask. We locked you away and called you dangerous. But we are begging you, please help us. We are dying. She transmitted the message and then sat back, exhausted. It would take time for the signal to reach Earth. Time for the Terrans to decide. Time they did not have. In the distance, alarms began to sound. The Vrask had been detected entering another system. The killing would continue while they waited for an answer from the Deathworlders, if they answered at all. Admiral Sarah Chen stood in the command center of United Terran Defense Headquarters, watching the alien transmission play for the third time. Around her, military officers and civilian leaders from every nation on Earth watched in silence. The message was clear, desperate, honest. They called us dangerous and locked us away, General Viktor Petrov said quietly. The Russian officer's weathered face showed no emotion. Now they want our help. They are dying, replied Ambassador Liu Wei, China's representative to the United Nations. They admitted they were wrong. That takes courage. Sarah Chen was 52 years old and had spent her entire adult life in the Terran Space Navy. 30 years ago, when humanity had first detected the warning beacons around their solar system, she had been a young lieutenant on a science vessel. They had decoded the message quickly. Stay away, dangerous species. Quarantined for galactic safety. The discovery that aliens existed but considered humanity too violent for contact had shocked the world. Some people had been angry. Others had been ashamed. But most had simply been determined to prove the aliens wrong. In 30 years, humanity had transformed. The nations of Earth, which had spent centuries fighting each other, had finally united with a common purpose. They would reach the stars. They would show the galaxy that humans could be trusted. They had built ships, established colonies on Mars and the moons of Jupiter, and prepared for the day when they would be welcomed into galactic civilization. They had also built warships. Lots of warships because humans knew something the peaceful aliens apparently did not. Hope for peace, but prepare for war. The universe was vast and dark, and not everything in it would be friendly. The Council of Nations needs to vote, President Chen Yuki of the United Earth government said. She was not related to Admiral Chen, despite sharing a common surname. This decision affects all of humanity. The vote took 7 minutes. It was unanimous. Humanity would answer the call. Admiral Chen immediately activated the emergency protocols. Across Earth's orbital shipyards, alarms sounded. The Terran Expeditionary Fleet had been maintained at ready status for 15 years, waiting for first contact. Now that contact had come, and it was a distress call. Within 3 hours, 120 warships were preparing to launch. The fleet included massive dreadnoughts bristling with railguns and missile batteries. There were carriers loaded with fighter craft, cruisers designed for long-range patrol, and support ships carrying supplies, medical facilities, and repair equipment. The flagship was the Tess Indomitable, a dreadnought that Admiral Chen would command personally. She stood on the bridge as her crew ran final system checks. The ship was 500 meters long and mounted enough weapons to destroy a small moon. All ships report ready for departure, her first officer reported. Commander James Mitchell was a veteran of the Mars Rebellion, a brief conflict 15 years ago when some colonies had tried to declare independence. It had been resolved with minimal bloodshed, but it had taught humanity an important lesson. Unity required constant work. One ship is still loading, Mitchell added. The Darwin's Revenge is taking on its specialized cargo. Sarah allowed herself a small smile. The Darwin's Revenge was a massive cargo vessel that had been retrofitted for a very specific purpose. It carried Earth's most successful survivors: bacteria, viruses, fungi, parasites, all carefully weaponized and ready to be deployed against hostile biology. The name had been chosen by the science team. Charles Darwin would have been proud. "Give them 10 more minutes," Sarah said. "Then we launch." In the Marine barracks, Captain Marcus Webb was giving his final briefing to the assault troops. Marcus was 45 with gray hair and scars from a dozen peacekeeping missions. He had joined the military at 18, served in 3 different armies before Earth unified, and had absolutely no patience for bullshit. "Listen up," he told the 2,000 Marines assembled in the hangar bay. "We are going to help aliens who are being attacked by other aliens. The friendlies are called the Syndicate. They are peaceful. They have never fought a war. They do not have weapons. They do not have soldiers. They are basically civilians who built a civilization on the idea that everyone can just get along." He brought up images of the Syndicate species: insectoids, mammalians, reptilians, and others. They looked fragile, delicate, nothing like the hardened survivors of Earth. The hostiles are called the Vrask Swarm. They are bugs, big bugs. They eat everything and everyone. They do not talk. They do not negotiate. They just consume. More images appeared showing the massive insectoid creatures and their biological ships. "Our job is simple. Protect the civilians. Kill the bugs." "Any questions?" A young Marine raised her hand. Private Jennifer Torres was fresh out of training, barely 20 years old. "Sir, what if the Syndicate species are afraid of us? What if they think we are as dangerous as the Vrask?" Marcus nodded. "Good question, Torres. Yes, they will probably be afraid of us. We evolved on a death world. We are predators. We are designed to hunt and kill. But fear and respect are closely related. Our job is to show them that humans can be dangerous when we need to be, but we choose to use that danger to protect others, not to harm them. Understand?" "Yes, sir." "Good, now gear up. We launch in 5 minutes." As the Marines prepared their equipment, Marcus thought about the message from the Syndicate. They had been honest about their fear of humanity. That honesty had probably saved their lives. If they had lied or tried to manipulate Earth, the response would have been very different. The Terran expeditionary fleet launched exactly on schedule. 120 warships activated their faster-than-light drives and disappeared from Earth's orbit in flashes of blue light. On Earth, billions of people watched the departure. This was it. First contact. Humanity was going to meet aliens. But instead of a peaceful greeting, they were going to war on behalf of species they had never met. In the command center, President Chen Yuki stood beside Ambassador Liu Wei, watching the empty space where the fleet had been. "Do you think they will succeed?" the president asked quietly. Ambassador Liu considered the question carefully. "The Syndicate called us dangerous and locked us away because they feared our capacity for violence. They do not understand that our capacity for violence is matched by our capacity for compassion. We are dangerous to our enemies, but we are loyal to our friends. The Vrask are about to learn the difference." On the bridge of the Indomitable, Admiral Sarah Chen watched the stars streak past as the ship traveled faster than light. The journey to the Calric system would take 3 days. 3 days to prepare. 3 days for the Syndicate to hold on. She opened a channel to the entire fleet. "This is Admiral Chen to all ships. We are going to help people who are dying. We are going to face an enemy that does not understand mercy or surrender. This will not be easy. But humanity has never chosen the easy path. We survived ice ages and plagues. We climbed out of caves and reached for the stars. And now, we are going to show the galaxy what Deathworlders can do when they fight for something other than themselves. For Earth, for humanity, for those who called for help." Across the fleet, thousands of crew members echoed her words. For those who called for help. The Terran expeditionary fleet raced through the darkness, carrying hope to a dying civilization. Tellus Station hung in space like a dying star, surrounded by millions of refugee ships. Ambassador Thelarin stood in the command center, watching the sensors with growing despair. The Vrask swarm had arrived. 3 days had passed since she sent the message to Earth. 3 days of waiting, hoping, praying to gods her species had stopped believing in centuries ago. There had been no response from the Terrans. Perhaps they had ignored the message. Perhaps they were still debating. Perhaps they simply did not care. It did not matter now. The Vrask were here. How many ships? She asked the sensor operator, a young Quellan whose hands shook as he worked the controls. Over 500 biological vessels, he reported, his voice barely above a whisper. They are forming attack formations. We have 12 defensive ships left. 12 ships against 500. Thalarin closed her eyes. The 12 ships were all that remained of the Syndicate's once proud fleet. They were science vessels and cargo haulers that had been hastily fitted with basic shields. They would last minutes at best. Order all civilian ships to move behind the station, she commanded. Have the defensive fleet form a line between the Vrask and the refugees. Every minute we buy is one more minute for people to escape. Escape to where? Someone asked quietly. There is nowhere left to go. The Vrask ships moved forward. Massive organic vessels that looked like they had been grown rather than built. They made no attempt to communicate. They never did. They simply came closer, preparing to feed. The 12 Syndicate ships opened fire with the few weapons they had managed to install. Mining lasers and industrial cutters never designed for combat. The beams splashed harmlessly off the Vrask bioarmor. Then the Vrask returned fire. Acid projectiles and biological missiles tore through the Syndicate shields like they did not exist. The first defensive ship exploded in seconds. Then the second. Then the third. This is the end, the old Korthan counselor said. He had refused to evacuate, choosing to stay on the station with Thalarin. We tried. At least we tried. Thalarin was about to respond when every alarm in the command center activated at once. New contacts, the sensor operator shouted. Multiple faster-than-light signatures detected. 120 ships dropping out of FTL. The holographic display updated, showing new vessels appearing between the station and the Vrask swarm. Ships unlike anything the Syndicate had ever seen. Angular, aggressive, covered in weapons. They looked exactly like what they were. Warships. Identify those vessels, Thalarin demanded, her heart pounding. The communications officer was already working, his voice shaking with disbelief. They are broadcasting identification codes. Origin Sol 3, species Terran. Admiral Sarah Chen commanding. They came, the old Korthan whispered. The Deathworlders actually came. On the bridge of the Indomitable, Admiral Sarah Chen studied the tactical display. The Vrask swarm outnumbered the Terran fleet 4-1. The biological ships were massive, easily twice the size of human dreadnoughts. Behind them, Tellus Station was surrounded by desperate refugees. Analysis, she ordered crisply. Commander Mitchell pulled up the scan results. The Vrask ships are biological in nature. Thick armor but no shields. They use acid-based weapons and some kind of biomissile. Highly aggressive attack pattern. They are already moving toward us, Sarah nodded. The Vrask had noticed the Terran fleet and changed targets. Good. Better to face the humans than slaughter helpless civilians. Open a channel on all frequencies, she commanded. Let us see if they understand threats. The channel opened. Sarah's voice was calm, professional, and absolutely cold. Vrask Swarm. This is Admiral Sarah Chen of the Terran Space Navy. You are hereby ordered to withdraw from this system immediately. Failure to comply will result in your complete destruction. You have 30 seconds to respond and begin withdrawal. The Vrask did not respond. They did not even slow down. They simply continued their approach, weapons already charging. Sarah had expected this. The Vrask were not interested in communication. Fine, humans could speak other languages. They are accelerating to attack speed, Mitchell reported. All Vrask ships are targeting us. Good, Sarah said quietly. They want to fight. Let us show them how Deathworlders do battle. All ships weapons free. Fire at will. The Terran Expeditionary Fleet opened fire. Railguns accelerated projectiles to a significant fraction of light speed, sending solid slugs of metal screaming across space. Each impact hit with the force of a small nuclear weapon. Missiles launched in swarms, hundreds of them, each one guided by sophisticated AI and carrying explosive warheads designed to crack asteroids. The first salvo hit the Vrask formation like a hammer. Biological ships exploded as railgun rounds punched straight through their armor. Missiles detonated in clusters, shredding the organic hulls. In the first 30 seconds, 20 Vrask ships were destroyed. On Tellus Station, the Syndicate observers watched in stunned silence as the battle unfolded. The Terran ships moved with precision, maintaining perfect formation while pouring fire into the Vrask swarm. Every shot seemed to hit. Every missile found its target. How are they doing this? The sensor operator whispered. The accuracy is impossible. They are hunters, Thalarin said softly, understanding dawning. They evolved chasing prey. Their eyes, their reflexes, their technology, everything is designed for tracking and hitting moving targets. This is what they do. The Vrask tried to return fire, but their acid projectiles were too slow. The Terran ships dodged with impossible agility, moving in 3 dimensions like predatory fish. When the biomissiles did hit, the human shields absorbed the impacts easily. Terran defensive technology had been designed to stop nuclear weapons. Biological attacks were almost trivial by comparison. But the Vrask had numbers. For every ship destroyed, 2 more pressed forward. They began to surround the Terran fleet, trying to overwhelm them with mass. Launch fighters, Admiral Chen ordered. The carrier ships opened their bays, and hundreds of small craft poured out. Human pilots, strapped into machines that could pull maneuvers that would kill most organic species, screamed into battle with wild enthusiasm. Captain Marcus Webb listened to the fighter pilots on the combat channel and shook his head. They were having fun, actually enjoying themselves. But then, fighter pilots were a special kind of crazy, even by human standards. Marines, prepare for boarding operations, he ordered. Some of these Vrask ships are going to get close enough for us to reach. When they do, we go in and tear them apart from the inside. The fighters dove into the Vrask formation like birds of prey. They were faster than the biological ships, more maneuverable, and flown by pilots who had spent their entire lives training for 3-dimensional combat. The Vrask tried to shoot them down, but the small craft were too quick, too unpredictable. One Vrask ship, damaged by railgun fire, drifted close to a Terran cruiser. Marines in powered armor launched from boarding tubes, crossing the space between ships and cutting through the biological hull with plasma torches. Inside the Vrask ship, Marcus Webb led his team through corridors made of organic material that pulsed and shifted. The Vrask themselves were there, massive insectoid creatures that attacked with claws and acid spit. The Marines fired their weapons calmly and efficiently. Bullets designed to penetrate body armor shredded the Vrask. Grenades cleared entire sections. In zero gravity, in toxic atmosphere, fighting creatures that had evolved to be perfect killers, the humans moved like it was just another day at work. Because for Deathworlders, it was back on the Indomitable's bridge, Admiral Chen watched the tactical display update. The Vrask were losing. They had numbers, but humans had experience, technology, and the simple fact that they had been preparing for war since before they could walk upright. The cargo ship Darwin's Revenge is in position, Commander Mitchell reported. Sarah allowed herself a thin smile. Deploy the payload. The Darwin's Revenge opened its cargo bay and released clouds of microscopic organisms, bacteria and viruses from Earth, carefully selected and modified to attack Vrask biology. The clouds drifted into the battle space, invisible but deadly. Vrask ships that came into contact with the biological weapons began to fail. Their organic hulls weakened and collapsed. Their weapons stopped functioning. The creatures inside died as Earth diseases, evolved over billions of years to be perfect survivors, found new hosts. The battle had lasted 3 hours. Of the 500 Vrask ships, 300 were destroyed or disabled. The rest broke formation and fled, retreating at maximum speed. The Terran fleet pursued them to the edge of the system, making sure they kept running. Only when the Vrask were truly gone did Admiral Chen order the fleet to return to Tellus Station. In the command center, Thalarin stared at the tactical display in disbelief. The Terrans had won, not just survived, but won completely, decisively, and with minimal damage to their own forces. Incoming transmission from the Terran flagship, the communications officer reported quietly. Thalarin straightened her uniform and accepted the call. A human face appeared on the screen. Female, with dark hair and eyes that had seen too much combat, but she was smiling gently. Ambassador Thalarin, Admiral Chen said, we received your message. Sorry it took us a few days to arrive. We came as fast as we could. The medical bay on Tellus Station had never been designed for this. Syndicate species did not fight wars, so their hospitals were built for accidents and illness, not combat injuries. Now the bay was filled with wounded Marines, and the Syndicate doctors were discovering just how different humans really were. Dr. Vesrin, a Quellan physician with 30 years of experience, stood over a human patient and tried to understand what she was seeing. The Marine had been injured in the boarding action, taking what should have been a fatal wound to the torso, yet he was alive, conscious, and complaining about being kept in bed. "Your lung was punctured," she told him, her translator converting her melodic language into English. "You should be dead. How are you still breathing?" Corporal David Chen grinned. He was 24 years old and thought this whole situation was hilarious. "I have 2 lungs, Doc. The other one works fine. Plus my blood clots fast. Deathworld evolution. We are built with backup systems." Vesserin checked her medical scanner again. The device was designed to work on dozens of species, but the human biology was confusing it. "You have redundant organs? Multiple systems for critical functions?" "Sure," David said. 2 lungs, 2 kidneys, a liver that can regrow itself, bones that repair themselves, an immune system that attacks anything foreign. We heal fast, too. I will be back on duty in a few days. Vesserin felt faint. On her homeworld, a wound like his would require months of careful treatment. A few days? That is impossible. Not for humans, David replied cheerfully. We evolved to survive injuries. Predators on Earth do not wait for you to heal. You either get better fast or you die. Across the station, similar conversations were happening. Syndicate engineers examined the Terran warships and could not believe what they were seeing. The ships had armor thick enough to stop meteors. Redundant systems for everything. Weapons that could function even if half the ship was destroyed. A young Veloxy engineer named Cressital stood on the bridge of the Indomitable with Commander James Mitchell, staring at the weapon controls. These are all kinetic weapons, Cressital said, his mandibles clicking in confusion. Railguns, missiles, projectile weapons. Where are your energy weapons? Your particle beams? Mitchell smiled. We have some energy weapons for point defense, but we prefer kinetics. Railguns are simple, reliable, and effective. Hard to jam, hard to stop. Just solid metal moving really fast. But that is so primitive, Cressital said without thinking, then immediately regretted it. I apologize. I did not mean, no offense taken, Mitchell assured him. Primitive works. Complicated weapons break down. Simple weapons just keep working. That is another thing we learned on Earth. Keep it simple. Keep it effective. In the diplomatic quarters, Ambassador Thalarin sat across from Admiral Sarah Chen. Between them was a table with refreshments, though neither had touched the food. They were too busy trying to understand each other. I must ask, Thalarin said carefully. Your military response was so efficient, so practiced. How long have you been preparing for war? Sarah considered her answer. Humanity has been at war with itself for our entire history. Thousands of years of conflict with brief periods of peace. We have had roughly 30 years of global unity. Before that, Earth was divided into nations that fought constantly. Thalarin was horrified. Thousands of years of war? Against your own species? Yes, Sarah said quietly. We fought over resources, territory, religion, ideology, and sometimes just because we were afraid of each other. Billions died. We developed weapons that could destroy our entire planet. We came very close to extinction several times. How did you survive? Sarah smiled, but it was a sad expression. We learned. Slowly, painfully, we learned that unity was better than division. That cooperation was better than conflict. When we discovered your warning beacons and realized we were quarantined, it gave us a common purpose. We stopped fighting each other and started working together. But you kept building weapons, Thalarin observed. You prepared for war even while seeking peace. Because we know what else might be out there, Sarah replied. The universe is vast. Not everything in it will be friendly. We hoped for peace, but we prepared for war. It is a human saying, if you want peace, prepare for war. Thalarin was silent for a long moment. We did the opposite. We achieved peace and forgot how to fight. We thought civilization meant abandoning violence completely. Now our people are dying because we cannot defend ourselves. You can learn, Sarah said gently. If you want, we can teach you. Not how to be like us, but how to protect yourselves. There is a difference between being peaceful and being helpless. Before Thalarin could respond, alarms sounded throughout the station. Both women rushed to the command center where the sensor displays were showing new contacts. More Vrask ships? Sarah demanded. No, the sensor operator reported. These are syndicate vessels. Ships that evacuated from other systems. They are asking for permission to dock. They heard about the battle and came here seeking protection. Over the next several hours, dozens of refugee ships arrived. Each one brought stories of more Vrask attacks, more worlds lost, more species fleeing for their lives. The syndicate was collapsing. That evening, the Syndicate Council met with Admiral Chen and her senior officers. The council chamber was crowded with representatives from dozens of species, all of them looking to the humans for answers. The old Korthan counselor spoke first. Admiral Chen, you saved us at Tellus Station, but the Vrask are attacking across the entire syndicate. We have hundreds of worlds, thousands of stations. Can you protect all of them? Sarah took a deep breath. This was the conversation she had been dreading. No, we cannot. The Terran expeditionary fleet is powerful, but we are 120 ships. The syndicate space is vast. We cannot be everywhere at once. Fear rippled through the council members. Some species had no poker face at all, and their terror was obvious. However, Sarah continued, and we can do several things. First, we can establish defensive positions around your core worlds and most important stations. Second, we can teach you how to defend yourselves. And third, we can send for reinforcements from Earth. Reinforcements? Thelarin asked. How many ships does Earth have? The expeditionary fleet is about 20% of our total military strength, Commander Mitchell said. We left the rest behind to defend Sol System, but if needed, we can bring more. The council members looked at each other in shock. The humans had 5 more fleets this size? A Quellan counselor raised a tentative hand. You said you could teach us to defend ourselves, but we have no warriors. We have not fought a war in thousands of years. How could we possibly learn? Captain Marcus Webb stepped forward. He looked exactly like what he was, a career soldier with no patience for diplomacy. You learn the same way everyone learns. Practice discipline and determination. You will not be as good as us. That is fine. You do not need to be. You just need to be good enough to slow down the enemy until help arrives. But we are not killers, another counselor protested. We are scientists, engineers, traders. Violence goes against everything we believe. Marcus nodded. I understand, but here is the reality. The Vrask are killers. They do not care about your beliefs. They do not care about your philosophy. They will eat you and everyone you love. You can either learn to fight back, or you can die with your principles intact. Your choice. The harsh words created shocked silence. Then, surprisingly, the old Korthan counselor laughed. It was a dry, rattling sound. The human is right, he said. We built our civilization on the idea that violence was unnecessary. We were wrong. Violence is unnecessary when everyone agrees to peace. But when someone breaks that agreement, you need the ability to respond. We forgot that lesson. We will not forget it again. Admiral Chen spoke up. The Vrask will return. They always do. Next time they will bring more ships. We need to be ready. I propose that we establish a joint command structure. Human military advisors will work with your people to create defensive forces. We will share our technology where appropriate. And we will coordinate our fleets to provide maximum protection. There is one more thing, Sarah added, her voice serious. You need to understand what you are asking for. If Earth commits to defending the Syndicate, we are not just helping temporarily. We are becoming part of your civilization. The galaxy is going to learn that humans exist. Things will change. There is no going back. Thalarin stood and looked directly at Sarah Chen. 3 days ago, we were dying. You came when we called. You fought for people you had never met. You asked for nothing in return. If that is what Deathworlders are like, then we would be honored to have you as part of our civilization. The council voted. It was unanimous. The quarantine around Sol 3 was officially lifted. Earth was invited to join the Syndicate of Civilized Worlds, not as a junior member but as a full partner. A guardian species. Later that night, Sarah stood on the observation deck of the Indomitable looking out at the stars. Commander Mitchell joined her carrying 2 cups of coffee. You know this is going to get complicated, he said, handing her a cup. Politics, cultural differences, species that will resent us. I know, Sarah replied, but we made the right choice. They called for help. We answered. That is what defines us as much as our ability to fight. We protect those who cannot protect themselves. Very heroic, Mitchell said with a slight smile. The Marines are already calling this the Deathworlders' oath. Protect the weak, fight the strong, answer the call. Sarah sipped her coffee and smiled. I like it. Make it official. 6 months had passed since the Battle of Tellus Station. The galaxy had changed in ways no one could have predicted. On the planet Velox Prime, Syndicate security forces trained under the watchful eye of Sergeant Maria Gonzalez. The Veloxi recruits were doing their best, but Maria had to admit it was slow going. The insectoid species had excellent coordination and could work together instinctively through pheromone communication, but they struggled with the concept of controlled aggression. No, Maria said patiently as one recruit hesitated to fire at the training target. The target is the enemy. The enemy wants to eat your family. You need to want to stop them more than they want to eat you. Feel the anger. Use it. The Veloxi recruit, a young female named Tessalin, clicked her mandibles nervously. But Sergeant, I do not feel angry. I feel afraid. Good, Maria said. Fear is useful. Fear keeps you alive. But you cannot let it control you. Fear tells you there is danger. Anger tells you to fight back. Use both, Tessalin tried again. This time her shots hit the target. Not perfect, but better. Progress, Maria said with a smile. Remember, you do not need to be as good as human Marines. You just need to be good enough to defend your home until help arrives. Keep practicing. Across Syndicate space, similar training was happening on dozens of worlds. Human military advisors worked with local forces, teaching basic tactics, weapons handling, and defensive strategy. It was not perfect. Many Syndicate species struggled with military discipline, but they were learning. Meanwhile, human engineers worked with Syndicate scientists to upgrade the civilian fleet. Cargo ships were fitted with basic weapons and shields. Science vessels received better sensors and communication systems. Stations were reinforced with defensive platforms. The Syndicate was slowly becoming harder to kill. Admiral Sarah Chen stood on the bridge of the Indomitable, reviewing the latest intelligence reports. The news was not good. Vrask scouts had been detected in multiple systems. They were probing defenses, looking for weaknesses. The swarm was preparing for another attack. How long do we have? She asked Commander Mitchell. 2 weeks, maybe 3, he replied. The Vrask are gathering their forces. This time they are not coming in small groups. This will be everything they have. Sarah nodded grimly. Has the reinforcement fleet from Earth arrived? They dropped out of FTL this morning, Mitchell confirmed. Admiral Petrov is commanding. He brought 200 warships and 50,000 Marines. Good. We will need them. The reinforcement fleet had caused quite a stir in the Syndicate. 200 more warships, each as powerful as the original expeditionary fleet. The Syndicate Council was beginning to understand just how seriously Earth took military preparedness. But they were also beginning to understand something else. Humans did not just prepare for war, they prepared to win. On Earth, the news of the impending Vrask attack had united humanity like nothing before. Factories worked around the clock producing weapons, ships, and supplies. Volunteers signed up for the military in record numbers. Children in schools learned about the Syndicate species and made artwork to send to the refugees. Humanity had found a cause worth fighting for. They were not just defending themselves, they were defending others who could not defend themselves. It gave their military strength a purpose beyond simple survival. Ambassador Thelarin watched the preparations from Tellus Station and felt a strange mixture of hope and fear. The humans were so confident, so determined, but the Vrask were coming with numbers that would dwarf even the combined human fleets. Are we ready? She asked the old Korthan counselor. No, he replied honestly, but we are more ready than we were 6 months ago. And we are not alone. That matters. 2 weeks later, the Vrask came. They arrived in a swarm that blotted out the stars. 5,000 biological ships, maybe more. The entire Vrask species committed to one massive assault. They had learned from their previous defeat. This time they would not hold back. The combined Terran Syndicate fleet waited for them at the Calric system, the heart of Syndicate space. 320 human warships formed the core of the defense. Surrounding them were 800 Syndicate vessels, newly armed and crewed by volunteers who had trained for exactly this moment. It was not enough. The Vrask outnumbered them 4-1. Admiral Sarah Chen stood on the bridge of the Indomitable and opened a channel to the entire fleet. Her voice was calm, steady, and absolutely certain. This is Admiral Chen to all ships. The Vrask think numbers will save them. They think we will break and run. They are wrong. We are humans. We are the species that conquered the most hostile planet in the galaxy. We are the species that survived ice ages, plagues, and our own stupidity. We do not break. We do not run. We stand and fight until the enemy is destroyed or we are. Today, we show the Vrask what happens when you threaten people under our protection. All ships engage at will. The battle began. The Terran fleet opened fire with everything they had. Railguns, missiles, plasma cannons, and weapons that had been developed specifically to kill Vrask. The biological ships died by the dozen, but more kept coming. The Syndicate ships fought alongside their human allies. They were clumsy, inefficient, and made mistakes that would have gotten them killed if not for human support. But they fought. They actually fought. On the bridge of a Veloxy cruiser, Captain Teslin commanded her first battle. She was terrified, her hands shaking as she gave orders, but she remembered Sergeant Gonzalez's training. Feel the fear, use the anger. Protect your home. Target the nearest Vrask ship, she ordered. Fire all weapons, her crew obeyed. Their shots were not as accurate as human fire, but some hit. A Vrask ship took damage and veered off course. We hit them, someone shouted. We actually hit them. Again, Tessalin commanded, her voice stronger now. Keep firing. Across the battlefield, similar scenes played out. Syndicate crews discovering that they could fight, that they could hurt the enemy, that they did not have to be helpless, but the Vrask kept coming. The sheer weight of numbers began to tell. Human ships started taking damage. Some were destroyed. The formation began to bend under pressure. On the Indomitable, Admiral Chen watched the tactical display and made her decision. Deploy the automated defense platforms. All of them. 3 months ago, human engineers had seeded the Calric system with automated platforms. Thousands of them. Each carrying weapons and powered by AI that could react faster than any organic crew. They had been hidden, waiting for this moment. Now they activated. The Vrask suddenly found themselves under fire from every direction. The platforms were small, hard to hit, and deadly accurate. They could not win the battle alone, but they turned the tide, and then Admiral Petrov played his final card. Darwin's revenge. You are cleared to deploy full payload, he ordered. The massive cargo ship, which had been hanging back from the battle, opened every bay and launched its cargo, not just bacteria and viruses this time. This time, Earth had sent something more aggressive. Nanomachines, microscopic machines designed to disassemble organic matter at the molecular level. They spread through the battle space like a plague, invisible but unstoppable. Vrask ships that came into contact with the swarm began to dissolve. Their biological armor failed. Their weapons stopped working. The creatures inside died as the nanomachines broke down everything they touched. The Vrask tried to run, but the nanomachines followed. They tried to fight, but you cannot shoot what you cannot see. In the end, they did what they had never done before. They surrendered. The transmission was crude, barely translatable. But the meaning was clear. The Vrask wanted to stop fighting. They would leave. They would never return. Admiral Chen stared at the message in surprise. The Vrask could communicate. They had just never bothered because they had never needed to. Accept their surrender, she ordered. But make it clear. If they ever attack the Syndicate again, we will hunt down every last one of them and eradicate their species. No mercy, no second chances, the message was transmitted. The Vrask fleet, what was left of it, retreated at maximum speed and disappeared beyond the galactic rim. The battle was over. Humanity had won. The casualties were heavy. 30 human ships destroyed, 200 Syndicate vessels lost, thousands dead, but they had won. On Tellus Station, Ambassador Thelerin watched the Vrask retreat and felt tears running down her face. They had survived. The Syndicate had survived. In the weeks that followed, the galaxy changed forever. The Syndicate officially lifted all restrictions on Earth and invited humanity to full membership. The quarantine was over. Earth was now a guardian species, responsible for protecting the Syndicate from external threats. But something else happened too. Syndicate species began to change. They had learned that peace required strength. That civilization did not mean being helpless. They would never be warriors like humans, but they did not need to be. They just needed to be strong enough to defend themselves until help arrived. 6 months later, Admiral Sarah Chen stood before the Galactic Council and delivered her formal address. Representatives from hundreds of species listened as she spoke. Humanity came to this galaxy as outsiders. We were feared, quarantined, and called dangerous. But when the syndicate called for help, we answered. Not because we wanted power, not because we expected reward, but because it was the right thing to do. We are Deathworlders. We evolved in hell and learned to thrive there. We know what it means to be afraid, to be hunted, to face extinction, and we decided long ago that no one else should face those things alone. The galaxy is vast and dark. There are threats out there that do not care about diplomacy or civilization, but those threats need to understand one thing. When you attack innocent people, when you threaten those who cannot defend themselves, you will face humanity, and we do not lose. The speech was broadcast across the galaxy. It was heard by species who had never encountered humans. Some were afraid. Others were hopeful. But everyone understood the message. Earth had arrived. The Deathworlders were here, and they were on the side of the innocent. On Earth, in a small classroom in Tokyo, a teacher named Yuki Tanaka showed her students images of the Battle of Calrix. The children were 7 years old, too young to understand the full implications but old enough to be proud. "Are we heroes?" one child asked. Yuki considered the question carefully. "We are protectors. Heroes save people because they are brave. Protectors save people because it is necessary. Humanity is not perfect. We have made many mistakes. But when someone calls for help, we answer. That is what makes us human." The children nodded, accepting this. They would grow up in a galaxy where humanity was not alone, where their species had a purpose beyond simple survival. They would inherit a future where Earth stood as a guardian, protecting the innocent from the darkness between the stars. And in that darkness, other species watched and learned. The humans had proven themselves. They were dangerous, yes, but they were dangerous in the right way. Dangerous to enemies, loyal to friends. The galaxy had spent thousands of years avoiding Deathworlders, fearing what such species might do. Now they understood. Deathworlders were not the monsters to fear. They were the monsters you wanted on your side when the real threats came calling. Ambassador Thelarin stood on Tellus Station, looking out at the stars, and thought about the distress signal she had sent 6 months ago. She had called for help from beings she feared, and they had come. They had fought. They had bled. They had won. The quarantine had been a mistake. Humanity was not too dangerous for the galaxy. The galaxy had been too unprepared for what was out there in the dark. But now they had allies. Now they had guardians. Now they had hope. The stars shone bright, and for the first time in months, Thelarin felt safe.